In this video, I'm going to show you how to make two different face mask styles. This first one that I've been calling accordion style because of the pleats. And then the second, which is, I'm calling it a fitted style just because it fits better. Although this one, I do make some adjustments too. So the first one is the accordion style because it's a little bit simpler. It's just, you're starting with two rectangles, that's it. I'm doing 6.5 inches for the height and about 8.5 for the width because I always give small seam allowances, so it'll end up being 6 inches by 8 inches. I recommend using a different color for the inside versus the outside so that whatever's exposed to the outside world you don't accidentally put on your face because you don't remember which side's the inside versus the outside. Very easy with a color-coded system. I'm trying to figure out how I got the elastic bands in there last time, which is why you see just me thinking and tapping. I did about 5 inches for the elastic band. I should have done 6 because I didn't really think about the seam allowance being sewn into the side of the mask. I also made them shorter because on that cloudy mask you can see I have little knots in them because it was a little bit too long, but I overcompensated and made it a little bit too short. You do have to pull the elastic to the corner it's nearest to, the short side corner. So when you're sewing, be careful because you do have to stretch the elastic, but also not sew over it at the same time. So you'll sew straight stitch for everything. It's really easy. You could hand sew it if you wanted to. And then just leave about 1.5 to 2 inches unsewn so that you can flip the mask right side out. Oh, I should dust my machine. Look at that. Cut off the threads, something I don't really do when I'm supposed to. And then flip it inside out, get out some aggression, shake that baby. And then there is ironing involved. I guess you don't have to if you don't want clean folds. I don't know. It's probably not that important. But it looks nice, makes it easier to pin. I am pinning all around the outside because I'm gonna sew a stitch all around it again. This will help seal that 1.5 to 2 inch opening, but it will also make it look uniform. You could use matching thread if you want. I do not want to change the bobbin or the thread, so it's gonna be this color for every mask I make. I'm making sure that little gap's closed. Great. Now you start making your pleats. So I do about 4 pleats. The cloud mask that I'm copying only has 3, and I don't like how it has a gap on the cheek because it's not as tight there, so I went with 4 here so that it has a tighter fit, more snug. Just make sure you have the same number of pleats on the other side and it will look, I feel like the pleats just kind of fall in line when you do it, but as long as you're not doing like 4 on one side and 3 on the other, I don't think you have to worry about it looking silly. But all of this, again, you can hand stitch. You could even just like tack each pleat down. I don't think you would have to fully hand stitch the whole side. Although it's only about 2 inches, so it's not too much to hand stitch. That's pretty much it. Cut off those loose threads. Again, I look like a very reckless person when I'm handling scissors. I did not realize that before. But take a look. It is done. And because if it's more snug on the ear, it's not blocking my vision like the other one is. Now for mask 2, this is my preference. I copied Mimi G's pattern, and then you'll see I'm going to make some changes to it because it's a little bit too big in my like jawline area. So I'm pinning, it's 1/2 inch I'm taking off the bottom center up towards 3/4 of an inch at the edges, which is what I just pinned or marked with a pin. Now you see I lift it. I still make sure it has some seam allowance. Trying to make sure that seam allowance is equal all the way around. Again, I'm using yellow on a light fabric so that you can't see anything that I'm drawing with chalk. Unlike the accordion style where you just cut out one rectangle for the inside, one rectangle for the outside, this you cut out 2 pieces for the inside and 2 pieces for the outside so that you can get the curve right without any gathering. From the bottom point to the top point, it's 6 inches. 6 inches from like the front towards the back too, and then I think it's 2.5 or 3 on that short side. I'm cutting a second because I'm going to make a couple more masks in different colors off camera. And then I have sort of like a pattern, I guess, pre-cut that I can just keep copying. I don't want to have to copy my mask each time. Now I just do the same thing with the orange fabric. The orange fabric is more of like a satin, and it's thicker than the other cotton fabric I'm using. So if you don't want to have something heavy on your face, probably don't go with some fancy shiny fabrics like I'm doing. Stick with more cotton. But I'm not bothered by masks and how they feel on my face. Maybe I would make a great Batman villain. I don't know. The mask doesn't bother me. Now you want to make sure both the inside and the outside pieces are pinned right sides together, which is really only important in this scenario for the orange fabric, since there's clearly like a shiny versus matte side, and I want the shiny on the outside. The like tan fabric that will go on the inside doesn't matter. There's no discernible inside versus outside on that fabric. But again, like the first mask, it's just going to be a basic straight stitch for everything. This is another thing that you could hand sew if you wanted to. I think I'm doing about a 2 to 2.5 length stitch here. It doesn't have to be that small. It's just, I like smaller stitches, I guess. So I did the outside, do the inside. I wasn't sure I could iron this fabric. That's why you see me being very cautious and like worried that I might be melting it somehow. But it was fine. I was being dramatic for no reason. If you give yourself wider seam allowance than I did, you could iron the seam allowance open and flat, but I did not do that. I always tend to give myself a really small seam allowance so that I can't hold on to it and iron it. And now you do right sides together again. I am putting the seams opposite ways so it's not like a thick bunch on one side of my nose, that it's more equally spread out. And then my overpinning tendencies kick in here, and I use an exorbitant amount of pins I don't need for such a small project. But just making sure it's lined up so that it curves properly when you sew. I like to add pins down the center just to make sure it doesn't move, especially because the orange fabric's slipperier and would like to migrate. And again, just straight stitch down the top, straight stitch down the bottom. Avoid pins if you can. You'll flip this so it's right side out after you cut off all those random threads, if you care to do so. Again, do some aggressive shaking. More ironing to do. I have pins in there so that I can get the edges like closer. The orange fabric has a tendency to like curl in sooner, and so if I don't iron, then I'm just gonna iron down like this extra wide edge that I don't need. So I want to make sure it's short along the seam allowance. I did melt a pin because I was not careful, so if there's plastic on yours, you know, maybe don't listen to everything I say. And then I just tuck it over twice. It's about 1/2 inch that you tuck it over the first time, and the second time you want to make sure there is enough room for that elastic band to go through with a safety pin. Again, just straight stitch that down. Straight stitch that sucker down. And I guess I just want to make sure it fits. This is not the best way to measure what you need, but that's what I did. It's about 9 inches, which is a little tighter. I might recommend 10 so that it's not as snug as it is. If you have like soft ears, then the elastic will definitely take control of them. I have some pretty tough ears, so it being tight is alright. But comfort is key so that, you know, you're safe during Corona and also not upset that this thing is squeezing your head. So zigzag stitch the elastic band, and then I hide the elastic seam in that channel because no one wants to see that. See, it fits. It's nice and snug, fitted for sure. 2 thumbs up. Hopefully this was helpful and makes a mask easy for you to make, since we'll probably be wearing them until 2021. If you like this, give it a like and subscribe. Thank you.